Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Before I start today's podcast, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Also, don't forget to follow me on my socials, Kirsty Johnson Coaching, are both Instagram and on Facebook. As well as if you are wanting coaching sessions with me, I'm a relationship coach. You can get them through kirstyjohnsoncoaching@gmail.com and contacting me through there. It is an email, so you email me and then back and forth with information, and I can tell you a bit more about what I do. As I am a coach, I did think to do more videos on the sort of practical side, coaching, some of the methods that I use to not necessarily do the coaching side of things, but sort of solutions, or rather things that you can put in place to sort of help things. And one of the things that I really do stand by is boundaries. Everybody has boundaries. You had boundaries as a children. You weren't allowed to go so far. Maybe you were only allowed to go to so-and-so's house or whatever. You had stuff like that. Or you only go as far as, you can't go on the main road, but you can be in the little neighbourhood. Stuff like that. So we all had boundaries as children. You know, you eat your dinner before you get your tea. You eat your dinner before you get your tea. You eat your dinner before, hopefully. You eat dinner before you get your pudding or whatever else. These are boundaries. These are things that our parents set in place so that we knew where we stood. And this is what boundaries are. Boundaries are, you know, sort of where we stand. And I've put this into 4 parts, technically 3, and then at the end I will sort of almost sort of summarize everything all together. But these are why it's important to set boundaries, how to set boundaries, and first and foremost, what happens if someone oversteps them boundaries. So this is part 1, and then the last one will be a summarised one. Why is it so important to set boundaries? So boundaries help people to understand where they stand in the things and how their behaviour is affecting everybody else. If nobody had boundaries, we'd all be doing whatever we wanted. In sort of the eyes of Freud, we'd be controlled by our id. And it is our way of sort of having that that line in the sand. This is how I think of boundaries. It's a line in the sand. We've drawn it. Nobody crosses it. And we had these children, like I said before, you had these as children. You know, you weren't allowed to have anything sweet until you'd eaten your proper dinner, or maybe your bedtime was 7 o'clock and you had a bath at 7. You were allowed to watch maybe, I don't know, half an hour worth of TV till 8 o'clock and then you went to bed. I don't know. But basically, these are things that your parents put in stone so that you knew where you stood. Because that's the important part of boundaries. You know where you are. Children like them, we like them as adults. We like to know that we have somewhere that we are. And when children aren't boundaried, so they haven't been given boundaries, they sort of become very unaware where they are, and they get a bit panicky and anxiety based because they can't understand why there isn't a boundary there. And that's sometimes what happens in adulthood. We don't think we have to follow on boundaries to adulthood, but you know, we can't do what we probably thought we were going to do at 6 years old. At 26, we're not going to be sat there at 6, we're like, I'm going to eat all the chocolate in the world, and you get to 26 and you're like, can't do that, that would kill me. But you know what I mean? We have to have these boundaries, and we have boundaries to ourselves. It's important when I talk about boundary setting that you're not just setting it to other people. You set boundaries to yourself. You set goals. This is done in goals. This is done in things that you do and don't let yourself do. At the moment, I'm trying to give up caffeine. It's hard, but it's a boundary line that I am trying to set for myself. And the thing with boundaries is there is such things as hard boundaries, things that these are the things that are to your core boundaries. These are things that are boundaries, because there's things in relationships that are even with yourself, which are things that you'd never do. They're against your morals, they're against your whole entire being, everything that you believe in, everything that you understand. And there's things that are kind of boundaries, and also things that are kind of a bit more, the fact that I'm giving up caffeine. If I have a bit of caffeine, I'm not going to be like, you idiot, you need to be punished. No, I'm going to go in and I'm going to be like, right, okay, I did that. But if I did something that I felt was immoral, I think cheating is immoral. If I ever cheated on anyone, which I haven't done, by the way, I would I would probably beat myself up for it inside, because it's something that to me is wrong. So this is when we have to talk about hard boundaries and soft boundaries. Soft boundaries are things like, I don't know, load the dishwasher how I want you to load the dishwasher. These are boundaries that are more loose. These are loose boundaries. These are things that are things that are not, they're important to us, but they're not be all end alls. These are not, these are things that are important to us, but they're not be all end alls. Someone does it to us, it's not as bad. But there is things, whereas hard boundaries are things that are unforgivable. And certain things can actually be soft boundaries at the beginning of a relationship, like commitment. And when you're first starting out and you're going out with somebody, the fact that they don't want to move in and have children and get married straight away is kind of a lovely thing. And it's a soft boundary. It's like, whatever. Whereas it can become a hard boundary when you get to the point and they won't commit. So it's something that maybe... And there is things that can definitely become over time. The idea that maybe your partner flirts with too many people. The fact when you started your relationship, this was a soft boundary, you didn't mind them doing a little bit of flirting. But when it becomes a problem, when it becomes something that is more what you see as morally incorrect, it then becomes something that is a hard boundary, and it's something that needs, when I say punish, I don't mean like sit on the naughty step, which is how our parents punished us. Let's be honest, most people know what the naughty step is, or the naughty chair, if you didn't live in an upstairs, or if you live in like a bungalow or anything like that, or like someone had somewhere timeout. Basically it was the timeout area. Everybody had one when they were children, or yeah, most people did. So these boundaries need to be set, and they're important that you set them and you set them right, because these soft boundaries are things that you can kind of, whatever. Whereas a hard boundary is something that you need to set in stone, and it needs to be something that is punishable, but not in the way that you think. I often think there's something in giving someone the benefit of the doubt, and there's things in when something is so immorally incorrect that you cannot bring yourself to know. And these are the things like, for me, one of mine is you don't cheat on me. I don't like cheating. I find it immoral. It is immoral. I find it appalling. I find it disgusting. But I also know, as humans, that humans do it. And I think that, for some people can give them the benefit of the doubt. I personally can't. I can't give someone who's cheated on me the benefit of the doubt. But other people can. And that's kind of what it is. And what your boundaries are is up to you. If you decide you don't want this as a boundary line, you don't want it as a boundary line. You don't need to listen. I would kind of think about innerly what someone could do to you that could make you break up with them. That's what you're trying to understand. What would make you break contact with somebody? And it doesn't have to be a romantic sense. A lot of people think of boundaries as relationship boundaries, but what about boundaries with your parents? Like, I know there's a lot of people where their parents are very sort of helicoptery. Helicopter parenting is an actual thing, isn't it? Or very like they don't let them do anything. I remember that storyline in Men, Women and Children where she like watches her daughter's phone. To me, that's an overstep of boundary. That's a lack of trust. And to me, that's something that can fragment a relationship. It's worth trying. The other thing I have to mention with boundaries, which is important to mention, is boundaries are not ultimatums. They're not ultimatums. The difference is that a boundary is something you set before you set, and it is how to explain. A boundary is something that you set. It's the line in the sand. It is you don't cross it. You know the consequences if you cross it, because that's one thing they have to know. They have to know the consequences when they cross it. Where an ultimatum is something that you're like, if you cheat on me again, if you cheat on me, it's over. Whereas a boundary is an unspoken, I don't permit cheating. That's not an ultimatum. That's a warning. There's my line in the sand, and you know what happens if you cross it. An ultimatum also as well is something that's a little bit more wishy-washy. A lot of people who set ultimatums in their relationship, you've gone past the point of being able to actually control that, because 9 times out of 10, people won't go for that ultimatum. They have to really, 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 really want to stay in that relationship. And let's be honest, if at the point where you have to be like, you cheat on me again, we're done. They're done. They don't respect you. They don't care about you enough to have gotten to a point where, you know, they're actually going to carry on. So with this, we're going to leave it here. In that, what we need to understand about boundary setting to go into actually setting boundaries, first and foremost, it is not an ultimatum. It's not the same thing. There is a differentiation. Second of all, we have them as children, and we know they're important, and that we know they're important to understand where we are. Also as well, we know that setting boundaries are the line in the sand. They are our cross points, and that there are hard and soft boundaries, and that we understand that some of them are uncrossable, unforgivable, completely and utterly never to be crossed, and some are just, you know, things that just annoy us. These are annoyances. This is the best way of describing a soft. It's annoyance. It's just a little bit annoying. Kind of like a soft boy. And the last one is that they are important for us to, because the reason to set a boundary is so that you are respected. And by setting boundaries not only with everybody else and setting them with your sort of romantic partners, with your friends, even with your family, which I know I should believe setting boundaries with your family is the hardest one to do, because at least with your partner you can be like, goodbye, whereas nobody wants to say to their parents, look, goodbye. And no one wants to say that to their children either. No one wants to go, you really, 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 really overstep the boundary, goodbye. And it is harder to have them, and the consequences, and we'll talk, when we talk about consequences, we'll talk about kind of lesser sort of, not necessarily cutting off your parents, which could be a point of doing so, but also our children. But also kind of having this thing of, you know, if you're going to talk to me like that, you're going to talk to me like I'm a 2-year-old, that's my cross point, that is my boundary. You talk to me like an adult. If you're going to talk to me like a child, then we're not going to talk. And it might be the point that it's not necessarily cutting them off, but until you can talk to me like that, I'm not going to talk to you like that. We'll get into it. We'll get into it when we do boundary setting, and when we do actually setting, and we actually do the actual, you know, consequence side of things. So yeah, it's incredibly important to set boundaries and understand other people's boundaries as well. And that might be a good idea as well. I might do a video on how to understand other people's boundaries and what to do when you overstep the mark of boundaries. Good video. Might be part 5. Might be 5 parts. Okay. Thank you guys. Have a lovely day. Oh, also before I finish, I'll just remind you to like, subscribe, share this video. Also as well, please follow me on socials, Kirsty Johnson Coaching on Facebook and Instagram. And finally, if you would like coaching from me, kirstyjohnsoncoaching@gmail.com, and I can coach you through setting boundaries. I can coach you through consequences of boundaries and how some people actually struggle with the whole idea of withholding their boundaries and sometimes can do things they feel is immoral. And we'll also talk as well about, which is a cool segue in there, I could also talk about people who have overstepped the boundaries and what you can do. And also, if you're single and you're wanting relationship boundaries before you head first into the pool of relationshiphood, as I like to call it, as well. So if you do want any help, please contact me, kirstyjohnsoncoaching@gmail.com. That's everything from me today. Have a lovely evening.